Hello everyone, have a nice day. Today we're following Tu Tieu as she's suddenly shut out of Yuri's world because Linh has become his private secretary and now controls every call, every meeting, every door. You'll feel Tu Tieu's fear as she tries to reach Yuri, the cold professionalism Linh uses like a weapon, and the moment a simple schedule turns into a heartbreak. If you find it interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. The hallway was still, but Tu Tieu's hands were shaking so badly she could barely keep her phone against her ear. She had called Yuri because that was what she did when the world felt unstable. 1 ring. 2. The click of connection should have been a relief. Instead, a voice answered smooth, controlled, and far too close to him. "Director Yuri's office," Linh said. "This is Linh." Tu Tieu's stomach dropped. Her throat tightened like the air had turned to glass. "Give the phone to Yuri," Tu Tieu said, forcing steadiness into each word. A pause, short, deliberate. The kind of pause that doesn't search for an answer, it chooses one. "May I ask the purpose of your call?" Linh replied, as if she were reading from a policy handbook written for people who didn't matter. "I'll check whether he's available." Tu Tieu's fingers curled around the phone. "My purpose is Yuri. He's in a meeting block," Linh said gently. "No interruptions." "He always answers me," Tu Tieu shot back, the crack in her voice betraying everything she tried to hide. Another pause. Tu Tieu could almost hear Lin's polite smile. "Starting today," Linh said softly, "all calls go through me." The words didn't just land, they locked. Like a door clicking shut from the inside. Tu Tieu lowered her voice, sharp and trembling at the edges. "Put him on speaker. Now." "I'm sorry, Tu Tieu," Linh replied. "That's not how it works anymore." Anymore. Tu Tieu went still, like her body didn't know where to place the pain. "Tell him I'm outside. Tell him I need 1 minute. If it's urgent, submit it," Linh said, calm as a receptionist behind bulletproof glass. "I'll schedule a slot." "Schedule?" Tu Tieu repeated, disbelief turning bitter. "I'm not a stranger. Professional boundaries protect everyone," Linh said smoothly. "They protect Yuri most of all." Tu Tieu's jaw tightened. "You're enjoying this." A tiny laugh light, almost kind. "I'm doing my job." And then, Linh added, like she was offering Tu Tieu a final chance to behave. "If you keep insisting, I'll have to record this as a disruptive call." Disruptive. The label hung there like a threat that didn't need to shout. Tu Tieu stared at the blank wall in front of her, trying to breathe through the heat behind her eyes. "You're threatening me," she said quietly. "I'm informing you," Linh replied. "Policies are policies." Tu Tieu swallowed, then spoke one last time, slow, controlled, and breaking anyway. "Tell Yuri," she said, "that shutting me out won't make the truth disappear." Lin's voice softened, almost gentle. "I will pass along your message." The line went dead. Tu Tieu stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to nothing. For a few seconds, her mind refused to accept the silence, like it expected Yuri to call back immediately, to correct this, to say Linh had misunderstood, to say, "Tu Tieu, come in." But the screen stayed blank. No call. No message. No apology. Only the quiet confirmation that Linh wasn't just answering calls. Linh had become the voice of Yuri's world. Tu Tieu forced her legs to move. The corridor felt longer than it had when she arrived. The lights are too bright. The air is too cold. Everything too clean, like the building had no room for messy emotions, No space for a girl who had once been able to walk into Yuri's life without asking permission. Earlier that morning, she'd come here hoping the floor would still feel familiar, hoping she could catch Uri before the day swallowed him whole. But the executive level didn't feel familiar anymore. It felt arranged. A small table near the corridor. Documents aligned into perfect stacks. A laptop open to a calendar view. A nameplate that hadn't existed yesterday. Private Secretary Lin. Tu Tieu had stopped right there, chest tightening as if someone had wrapped a ribbon around her ribs and pulled. Lin had been standing behind that setup like she belonged there, hair tidy, suit sharp, tablet in hand, as if it were a key. Her smile had been polite in a way that didn't invite warmth. "Good morning," Lin had said. "You're Tu Tieu." Not a question. A file label. When Tu Tieu tried to move past her, Lin had shifted only half a step small, precise blocking, without ever looking like she was blocking. "I'm sorry," Lin had said, gentle as a velvet rope. "You can't enter without my confirmation." Tu Tieu had raised her voice, just enough to carry. "Uri." The glass door had opened wider. Yuri appeared in a perfect suit, with a calm face, eyes that revealed nothing. Tu Tieu's heart had lifted for half a second until she saw where Uri's gaze went first. Not to her, to Lin. "Is my schedule ready?" he'd asked. "Yes," Lin replied instantly, stepping closer with the tablet. "Morning calls, meeting blocks, document flow. No interruptions unless you approve." Yuri nodded once. "Good." And when Lin finally told him, "Tu Tieu is here. She wants to see you." Uri had looked at Tu Tieu like she was a problem to be managed. "Lin is my private secretary," he'd said. "This is official." Official. Tu Tieu had felt the word stamp itself onto her chest like a rejection. Then Uri had turned slightly. "Close the door." The click of the latch had been quiet, but to Tu Tieu it had sounded final. Now, walking away from that floor, her hands started trembling again, not with fear, but with the shock of being locked out cleanly, professionally, without anyone even raising their voice. She reached the elevator area and stopped in front of the mirrored wall. Her reflection looked like someone who had just lost a war without knowing it had started. She opened the call log. Yuri outgoing call ended. No return call. Tu Tieu pressed her lips together until they hurt. She wouldn't cry here. Not in a hallway that smelled like polished stone and quiet power. Crying would mean accepting she'd been pushed out. She refused to accept it. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Tu Tieu stepped inside alone, phone heavy in her palm. As the doors began to close, she glanced once more down the corridor toward the floor where Lin stood like a locked gate. The doors shut. The elevator started descending. Tu Tieu exhaled, a whisper. "So that's it. That's what I am now." A vibration hand. Incoming message. Number. One line. Stop calling him. His secretary. Tu blood ran. Tu Tieu replied to the unknown number. Thumb hovered over the toward the lobby. Message wasn't just a warning. It was proof that someone could see her panic in time. Close her next move. When the doors opened, she stepped out into a world that sounded too normal. Rang. Shoes clicked. Outside, the sun hit the glass facade and made her squint. She walked without knowing where she was going until her body finally stopped. Her hands trembled tight, a behind her eyes. Another message. Same unknown number. Don't make a scene. Lin will mark you as unstable. Stomach too thick. Confident. Someone wasn't guessing. Then a company-wide email notification flashed on her screen. Subject: Executive Office of. She and the words landed like a stamp. Effective immediately. Miss Lin is appointed Director Yuri's private secretary. All scheduled communications approvals will be coordinated through her office. Tu Tieu until the. So it was a system. Swallowed hard. Yuri's name. Message. I'm upstairs. Deleted. Need you. Deleted. Come, I'll leave. Her fingers froze because she wasn't sure leaving was a threat or the only way to keep herself from begging. She went back inside, to the elevator, to the visitor desk. The receptionist gave her a polite smile. Do you have a moment? I need Director Yuri. And hated how her voice sounded. The receptionist glanced at the screen and nodded. One moment. I'll contact the executive office. 2. Connect. And then Lin's voice, clean, calm, in control, came through the receiver. Executive office. Receptionist low voice. Hi. Lin. 2. Requesting to see Director. There was no hesitation. Director Yuri is unavailable. Please ask her to submit a report. Tu answer. Say my name. Receptionist hesitated. Again. She asks exceptions, Lin said. Locked door. Took the desk phone carefully from the receptionist's hand. Lin, she said, low and shaking edges. A tiny paw Lin before she spoke. Tu Tieu, we already talked. I'm not meeting Tu Tieu with. You are a disruptor, Lin replied. If you care about Yuri, you'll. Tu grip tight. If you care about him, you wouldn't enjoy it. I don't enjoy anything, Lin said. I manage. That's what he wants. He didn't. Tu snapped, the pain breaking through. He chose you. Silence a second. Then Lin's voice, even sweet. Please, premises, Tu Tieu. Security is trained for situations like this. Receptionist stiffened, widening. Tu Tieu's breath caught. Was quiet, real. Phone back with trembling fingers. I'm sorry, she murmured, though she wasn't sure what it was for. She walked out with her hands shaking open now because high energy she didn't have. On the she stopped the row of parked cars, chest heaving as she just run. Down at her phone again. No call from only the unknown number waiting like a shadow. And then finally, a email arrived. From Lin, regarding our access to direct Tu Tieu's tightened. The preview line showed for her thumb froze. Director Yuri agrees. Pitched. She opened it. The email was brief, formatted like a contract. Minute slot 30 p.m. Conference room C. Lin would be present. Tu Tieu agreed. She reply with a word. Accept. Tu Tieu until then she accept. By evening, the building felt quieter. Conference room C smelled like and conditioning. Lin sat with posture perfect, like she owned on the The door opened. He stepped in front of Lynn. 5 minutes, reminded softly. Yuri finally looked at Tutu. Why are you pushing this? Tutu's hands. Because you, she whispered, and you put her in charge of the key. Yuri's expression flickered something like fear. Lynn watch. Minutes. Tutu turned away, walking out trembling, refusing to let be. Uri started to say her name, but Lynn's voice cut in. Director Uri, meeting. I.
Tử Tiêu vội vã đến Uri không được an ủi nhưng nghe trả lời điện thoại với lùng đầy uy quyền. Một thông báo từ cấp quản lý là thư ký riêng Uri liên lạc và quyền truy. Tử Tiêu cố gắng gọi điện và khẳng định cô không là một yêu cầu, nhưng Linh chặn cô bằng những lời đe sự, thậm chí còn rằng bảo vệ có thể đuổi đi. Điện thoại lạ cảnh báo rằng nghe lén và sẽ gắn mác Tử Tiêu không ổn định. Nếu cô gây cuối cùng Linh đề nghị 1 phút theo điều kiện của yêu cầu Tử Tiêu trả lời chấp nhận. Trong phòng Linh canh thời gian cuộc trò chuyện trong khi giữ khoảng cách, hỏi tại sao Tử Tiêu lại thúc ép. Tử Tiêu run rẩy, nhận ra mình bị điều khiển và bỏ đi trước khi cô gục ngã, trong khi Uri gần như gọi tên cô nhưng lại bị Linh ngăn lại bởi lịch trình của ông ta.